Hi guys, Monique here, Goluremi Girls. Today we're talking about how to make it professionally in the women's game. Let's go. This is a video I wish was out there when I was trying to make it professionally, and it will save you a lot of time, the tips that I have for you today. So hope you enjoy it, and let's get straight into it. Side note for those in America who may have problems understanding my accent, I grew up in New Zealand, but I will speak clearly and hopefully you can understand me. We thought it was about time there was a blueprint for how you can approach clubs, agents, set yourself up trials in the women's game, because let's be honest, there is still a lot of differences between how professional environments in the women's and the men's game are run. So today, I've got some pointers for you on how you can set yourself up to securing that trial, to getting yourself the best opportunity to being in a professional football environment. So if your games aren't being filmed by your own club, then get anyone who can film it for you. All you need is a basic tripod, a phone, your dad, anyone to just come along and film those games and have some of that footage, because approaching clubs or agents or contacts without any kind of show reel, you're gonna get nowhere. So that should be your first focus, and also the quality of that show reel is really important. Passing and shooting and defending elements, so that it's very clear what your attributes are, and to show the best side of your game as well. So that is point number one. But along with a good show reel, you also need a CV, so detailing where you've played, your appearances, your goals, any kind of stats you have, any kind of individual awards you might have picked up along the way as well, so that wherever you are and whatever clubs or agents or contacts you're approaching, they have more of an insight into where you've come from and where you've played. For trials, any kind of tryouts, it's good to be across all kinds of social media. Big clubs, depending on which level you're playing at, often hold academy tryouts. You know, Liverpool, Chelsea, they still do that kind of thing depending on the age groups for their reserve teams as well. So if you're across Twitter and Instagram and their websites, you can often see when those opportunities might come up, and that is a really good way to get your foot in the door and to be open to exposure to their first team, to the reserves, to building up to that level of where you would want to play. The next point is to contact teams directly. Now, there's a huge market for being able to do this, and the best way to go about doing that is to do your research. Which clubs are in your area? Which clubs are in your level? If you've played semi-professionally, where can you target that would look at your show reel and say, okay, we will have a look at her? That's a really important point, because if you're targeting clubs that are way out of your spectrum, then you're probably wasting your time for now. So be realistic. Often all clubs, if you go to their websites, you will see a club secretary, and you can email them and send through your CV and show reel. Especially in more semi-professional environments, what a lot of people don't know is that clubs are really open to that. I've had experiences where clubs have gone back to me and said, yeah, we'd be happy to take a look at you. So email as many clubs within your spectrum as you can. Don't be annoying. If you don't hear back, then they're probably not interested, but target as many as you can. You can get yourself an agent. Now, in the women's game, this isn't, I think, as necessary as it is in the men's game, but if you are looking for an agent and don't know where to start, make sure you find one that focuses on women's football, because picking up a FIFA accredited agent who focuses mainly on men's games, they're not going to have the same contacts as an agent who only does women's football. So make sure when you're searching for an agent that you find someone who has those contacts solely in the women's game. And be careful about who you pick too. Often you have to sign up for a year or 2 years. When I start working with a new agent, I always say, look, can we just do 1 year and see how it goes? Because once you're locked in and things might not go the way you want it, it can be quite difficult to get out of it. So make sure you're representing your own interests when you find an agent. They often talk a big game. Oh, we have contacts at Chelsea, at Lyon, at Seattle, all these kind of things. And it sounds really good, but how are they representing you? Where do they see you fitting in which environments, and what can they offer? And also be wary that you're not paying anything up front. If they ask for money before they've done anything for you, then adios straight away. Often agents will either negotiate their own fees on top of what you earn, or they'll take like a 4 to 10% cut of your earnings. So you pick an agent that you feel really works for you. Someone might say, oh yeah, I know someone in the men's game who plays for Spurs, but that means nothing in the women's game. That doesn't mean that they know anyone who can help you out. So make sure the contacts are women's football specific when picking your agent. The biggest point and the biggest difference for me in women's football and how you can make it is connections. Connections are huge in women's football. You're much more likely to get an in if you can go through someone you know or someone you might know. So in that regard, the more clubs you can play for, the more teammates you can speak to, the more coaches you can work with, the more opportunities you will create for yourself, because networking in women's football is so important. For me personally, I was training one-on-one in Sydney with a coach, and that connection, he was from the UK. He managed to get me a trial with Liverpool Women's Football Club, which would never have happened had I approached the team myself. So contacts like that are so important. Build your network as much as you can. Don't be afraid to ask anyone. I think the great thing about women's football is that everyone is very supportive, in my experiences at least, always wanting to help. So if you know someone who knows someone, get in touch with them. Say, hey, do you have a contact number? Do you know who I should get in touch with to sort something out at this club? Blah, 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 blah. That sort of thing still works really well in women's football. You're much more likely to get results with a club when you're on the ground. So if there's somewhere, for example, in my experiences when I was in New Zealand and I had an ambition to play, and my dream was to play in the UK, and I contacted club after club after club with my showreel and my highlights, and I heard back from very few. And I realized that the way to make it happen, obviously to make trials happen, to get in touch with these teams, was to actually be there on the ground. So I went over to the UK without having had much set up, but I knew that if I could get in touch with these clubs and say, hey, look, I happen to be in the area, would you take a look at me? And that sort of thing works really well because the club doesn't have to pay anything, and it's just like, yeah, okay, she can join in training and we can have a look at her. So if it is within your budget, to book yourself somewhere, to stay with family or friends, wherever, use your network to approach those clubs and say, hey, look, here I am. If you're training, could I come along and join in on a session? Now, that's not going to work at your likes of Chelsea or Orlando Pride, but even one tier below or semi-professional environments, they'll often say, yeah, sure, look, if you're here where the budgets might not be as good, we'll take a look at you. So use that information to the best of your ability to be able to create opportunities for yourself. Most clubs offer accommodation for players, which comes with subsidized wages most of the time, but then you can take advantage of that and maybe come along for a week if they sort out the accommodation and all you have to do is sort out your food. Hardly any expense for that club as well, and then a really good chance for them to take a look at you for over a week kind of period. So those are the main important points to take away in women's football, where to get started and how to get yourself into a semi-professional or professional environment. You need a good CV and a good highlights reel cut together as professionally as possible. Use your contacts, maybe even get it professionally edited if you're not so familiar with the software yourself. Look for open trials on social media, especially in academies, under 15s, under 18s, reserve teams. They offer a lot of opportunities to get yourself in with a first team in a professional environment. Use your connections, every single one, even connections that might not even be yours. Reach out, don't be afraid to reach out. Nothing ventured, nothing gained. The worst they can say is no. You tick it off your checklist and you move on. And also being on the ground in the area is a great way to be able to present yourself to a club without the club having to take on any of the costs of bringing a player in, to give yourself an opportunity to show your skills and perform in a trial environment. Yes guys, we hope you found that video helpful. Just a bit of a blueprint there for you now on how to make it professionally in the women's game and where to start. Let us know what you think, what other insights into the game you want to see. There's so much we have to share with you. Leave it in the comments, make sure you like and subscribe, and we will see you in the next one.